Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Module 6. It's hard to believe you're so far in the semester. So last week, Module 5 was a little bit of a lighter of a module, and that's because Module 6 has a lot of work. So last week you had a discussion where you read some articles about struggling readers, and then you had some questions on a discussion post. So last week wasn't that difficult. We just had the discussion post. This week, we do have more work to do. That's why you didn't have as much work last semester or last module. So first thing to do is let's talk about what we're going to work on this week. So as we go to our aims, our objectives in this module is to evaluate the effectiveness of digital resources, recommend effective digital resources, and then defend the use of digital resources in using research-based criteria. And then lastly, you're going to be writing a literature review on literacy instruction. So those are objectives. And this week you have, if we go under the Learn, there are 3 different articles to read. And I'm going to talk more about those articles in a minute. If you need some videos about the literature review, that is there. And there are supplemental resources if you want to look at those supplemental resources. You have 2 assignments. The first assignment involves, I'm actually going to come back to, but there are 3 articles that you're going to read. And after you read the 3 articles, you need to select one of the digital programs, and you're going to look up the effectiveness of this. So hold tight on that one. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. The big assignment that you have this module is your literature review. And so I'm going to go to that. So here are some topics. These are topics we've been researching this in this class. And I told you if you had another topic, you could do that. I also sent out an announcement. If you found a grant proposal that requires a literature review, you could do that instead. So let's look at the criteria. Should be 6 to 8 pages, and that does include your title and references. So text might be 4 to 6 pages. You're going to develop a topic statement to identify the literature review. You're going to read your peer-reviewed articles. You need at least 8 peer-reviewed journal articles. And remember, we talked about the difference between research-based and scientifically researched. So we want those scientifically researched articles that meet those criteria that we learned about in this class. Now it says your final paper should be a minimum of 8 full pages, but no more than 10. At the front, it said 6 to 8. I'm fine with 6 to 8, including the reference or the title page and the reference. You are going to use APA. So let's look at our rubric. The literature review should provide a comprehensive and insightful synthesis of the research. And remember, it needs to have at least 8 sources. It needs to incorporate a broad range of high quality and current sources. And again, we said 8. It should be free from grammatical spelling, punctuation, and it should be logically organized with an introduction, body, and conclusion, good flow. And as you write that literature review, we're going to be thinking about trends and also think about, are there any gaps in the literature? So that's the big one, the big paper that you have. And again, it can be 6 to 8. But I do want you to have 8 scholarly resources for your references. So those are your 2 assignments. Now I want to kind of go back to these articles because they are quite a bit of there's a lot to the articles, and I wanted to kind of talk you through some of these. So you have 3 big articles. The first one is called I was going to download it, is Technology-Based Reading Intervention Programs for Elementary Grades. So I'm going to expand this so you can really see it. And I took a lot of different notes on this one. The research design for this study is a literature review. So, a literature review is actually a research design. I had a student last semester that her honors thesis was a literature review. So, a literature review can be a research design. In this research, 42 articles uh, met the criteria. All of these articles have to do with technology and reading intervention programs. So they looked at 42 different articles. All the articles were then put into categories: phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary comprehension, fluency, and then they had a multi component. There were very strict criteria that had to be used to be included in this literature review. And so that was something that they talked about, those criteria. And then as you progress, it talks about the journals, the different journals where they got a lot of the articles from, the dates of publication, and then all of these are the articles. So you can, if you want to get into the articles, they're right here. Um, some of the criteria that it talks about: all the participants should be in elementary grades or between ages 6 to 12. That was one of the criteria for the research. The purpose of the intervention had to be about improving reading. It had to be based on assisted technology. It had to be carried out on the reading acquisition of first language, and studies focusing on second language learners were excluded. So that's something to think about. It should be based on explicit instruction. It should include at least 5 participants in the intervention, and they wanted it to be published between 2000 and 2017. So those were the criteria. So this is a longer article, but what they've done is they've broken it up into your reading categories, and then they have given you different technology programs and told you what those technologies programs teach related to reading. For example, one of those under phonics is Lexa, which is a literacy teaching intervention program. It's phonics based, and it tells you about the results of that intervention and what the research says about that. Here we have Grapho Game. It's another intervention. So we have Abracadabra. A lot of schools use that as Rita. So all of these are tons of different interventions that you can look at. Now, that goes back to our discussion post. So in our discussion post for this week, you're going to take a reading program from one of the articles that you read, and you're going to do some little research about that. Most of the programs are mentioned in the first article, called Technology Based Reading Intervention Programs. So that's the one that will state all of those reading interventions that are technology based. So in that discussion, you're going to be researching that. The other article I wanted to just briefly talk to you about, which I thought was very interesting, it says, what research has revealed about readers' struggles with comprehension in the digital age? This researcher this isn't really a research article, is more because there is no research on it, but he is providing a critique, and the critique is, he's saying that the science of reading is um, limited in how they view reading, and that we need to do further research related to research in online reading. And he states that there should be a reconceptualization of reading, and it shouldn't be limited just to the simple view of reading. And one of the things he states in the second page is, the reality is that reading does not begin or end with phonics or a whole word instruction. It's far broader and more complex. Reading, broadly conceived, is an interaction between a person, be it a child, adolescent, or adult, and written language. So he's saying that reading is not only should involve the science of reading concepts, but it also goes back to those theories that we learned, right? He's saying that reading is a social and cultural phenomenon as well as a neurophysical one. So you kind of get his theory as you're reading it. So in this article, it talks about the importance of that our students nowadays have information saturation. They have information seeking, but they don't always know how to find the right source. And his argument is that teachers should help students acquire those skills. So it's a really good article. So hope you will get a lot out of that. And then the last article is probably the more difficult article to read, but this is a study that evaluated literacy skills. There were 426 students in Finland that took part in this research. And basically, what they did was the students received an email from a fictitious principal, and the principal asked them to do research on the impact of energy drinks. And then the students did this, looked up resources and so forth on online, and then they used this to determine how well students could research and use online research tools. So again, this is a very interesting article too. But we can see all these articles. We're in an era now where our students are going to be using digital technologies. They're saturated with it, but how do we teach? I think you're going to see in all three articles what talks about is students need to know how to synthesize. They need to know how to know what is accurate and what's not accurate. They need to know how to set parameters for research and know what are good sites and what are not good sites to use. Also, they need to know if an author is a credible author or not for whatever it is that they're studying. So I'm going to go back to the discussion board. So on our discussion board for this week, here's what it says. It says, after reading the three articles, select one of the digital programs mentioned in the articles to evaluate further. And you're going to use that, do that from the What Works Clearinghouse website. And you need information from another article to kind of support that. And you can get that from the What Works Clearinghouse. I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to go back because the What Works Clearinghouse is actually under the Learn section. So we're going to go to What Works Clearinghouse. If you had me for EDUC 5433, I showed you this website. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to put in one of the programs that the article talked about, and that is Read 180. Read 180 is actually a program that the Department of Defense schools used to use for fourth grade and up. So I'm going to download. Here it has intervention report. We can see tier 1 is strong, tier 2 moderate, tier 3, it looks like reviews of individual studies. So lots of information here. So I'm going to go to the latest one, which is at the top. And I'm going to download the intervention report. So here is the intervention report for Read 180. And what it does is it tells you a little bit about what Read 180 is. It's a 45 to 90 minute session. And it gives you, at the very beginning, it tells you that they found research that measured comprehension, literacy achievement, fluency, and alphabetics. And it tells you that there were some positive effects for comprehension, general literacy, potential positive effects for reading fluency, no discernible effects when it comes to alphabetics. And then as you go down, it gives you the articles. Now, something I think that's really interesting is on this page, back here. It says, the What Works Clearinghouse identified 39 studies that investigated the effects of Read 180 on achievement. An additional 117 studies were identified but do not meet the WWC eligibility criteria. Citations for all 156 studies are in the reference. So there's 156, but only 39 were eligible. So let's look at this. Reviewed 39 eligible studies against group design standards. Of that 39, 3 studies were randomized. Remember, we talked about randomization makes the study more valid. And then it talks about 6 studies are randomized controlled trials and quasi experimental designs that meet the WWC. So, out of 156 studies, only 9 had those research based requirements that they were cited in What Works Clearinghouse. And it's important that you delve into this because at first glance, you can say, wow, they had 156 studies on Read 180. It's true, but only 9 of those met the What Works Clearinghouse criteria for being not research based. Probably all 156 are research based, but meet that scholarly expectation for research. And then it provides the summary of those. This is where you can get more information for your discussion post. So this has information about Read 180. Now, not all of the programs mentioned in the articles are on What Works Clearinghouse, so you're probably going to have to do some searching to find an article that you're or a program that you're interested in. I just put Read 180 because I was familiar with Read 180. I'm going to put in here, I think I spelled it wrong. Yep, I probably did. ABC, let me just try. Look and make sure. Okay, so you'll have to kind of look and see if you can find one. If you had me for ED 5433, you know, I talked a lot about accelerated reading. That's mentioned in here too. So that might be an intervention that you could look up and see what research you find about that. So I'm going to go back to our what we're going to do this week. You have 2 assignments. The first assignment is to read the 3 articles. After you read the 3 articles, you're going to your discussion post is you're going to pick one of the technology apps or programs mentioned that teach reading. You're going to look that up in What Works Clearinghouse, and in your discussion post, you're going to say, through a video, would you recommend this or not? And guys, this is really important because some of you may be administrators, some of you may be literacy coaches. You need to know what programs work and what programs don't work. What should kids be using and what they should not be using? And be able to look at that What Works Clearinghouse and be able to analyze the results to know that, yeah, there's 156 studies, but only 9 of them met the standards to be considered as valid and reliable for What Works Clearinghouse. So not everyone delves into that. Many times we'll get these reading programs, they sound good. A publisher or someone, they'll come into a school or school district and say, hey, you need to do this program. It has great results. And people don't really look into it. And then once you buy a program, usually districts have you use it, whether it's effective or not. So you have a discussion post and you have your literature review. Your literature review is 6 to 8 pages, including the title and the references. Okay. I hope you'll enjoy like digging into some of these computerized programs because I know your kids are using these programs, and I hope that you'll find what works and really what doesn't work. And you can find it on What Works Clearinghouse. Thanks.